We have an exciting program this evening. And to introduce our speakers, please welcome the managing partner from our sponsor, Plante Moran, Robert Shenton.
Thank you, Carol, and certainly it's my pleasure to be up here to introduce our program tonight and say a few opening comments. I've had the pleasure now of probably double-digit years of introducing this annual meeting. And we've had a long-standing relationship with Plante Moran and the Columbus Metropolitan Club in terms of not only service to the Metropolitan Club, but also the opportunity to sponsor and be part of the relevant conversation that is so much a part of the fabric of what the Metropolitan Club is. I do want to say thank you to Mo. Great job with your leadership. Thank you, Jane, certainly with your leadership. And I've been here now for 20 years, came here in 1997. And Carol was actually one of the first people that I met here when I came to Columbus 20 years ago as part of the Fisher School and executive education and things. And it's really part of the theme that I kick this off with tonight, and that is that Columbus is welcoming, collaborative, and uniting. And you say, well, we're going to talk about buildings and projects and all those kind of things and how much the city has grown, which it certainly has. And I can think about the past 20 years and all the different projects that have come about, whether it's the Arena District, whether it's part of downtown, whether it's Easton, New Albany, Dublin, Polaris, all these things that really are part of things that we call are really cool here in our community. But you know what? Those are projects. And what really is the key to our success and what's happening here is our relationships. And that's that strength of community, a word of community that I use here tonight. And I'm so happy to be part of that and part of the people that we'll introduce here to talk about our projects in building, but really what this community does as we're a rising star on not only the national scene, but the international scene for what we're going to get to do here in Columbus going forward. And so as part of that, we're going to talk here tonight about We Built This City. And yeah, we hear the song, not on rock and roll and such, but, we're building this city with the investment, with the integrity, the ingenuity, the intellectual nature of what we have here. We are a smart city. Not only in terms of what's been acknowledged in terms of the grant and the awards, but by the people that are here. We know we're smart. And so our panelists here tonight are just a sample of those that are involved in Columbus's transformation and how we continue to move up in terms of our scene to that next level. So your form flyer has information on each of our panelists, but we'll just keep these introductions brief. And so we'll start first up with Wagenbrenner Development, Mark Wagenbrenner. Round of applause, please. Next up, Senior Executive CEO of Moody Nolan, Kurt Moody. One of our best-known real estate developers here in town, founder and CEO of Continental Real Estate, Frank Cass. And to lead our discussion here this evening, co-owner of the Benjamin D. Rickey Company, Nancy Ritchie. Welcome, panelists. Nancy, take it away. Thank you.
Are you able to hear me? Perfect. I think everyone in this room could agree that the city of Columbus today is a very different city than it was when CMC was formed a little over 40 years ago. Much of that change has been in the city's built environment. We live in a dynamic, ever-changing, wonderfully progressive city. And today, these guests are among those people who actually made it happen. So I'm very honored to sit on the stage with you three gentlemen. The format for tonight is I'm going to ask questions, and actually I'm going to ask a question and have each of you answer the same question, and we'll start with different people going first. So in the tradition of CMC, just know that there will be time for questions from the audience at the end. So as they're talking, think about the questions that you might want to ask toward the end of the program. So Mark, why don't we start with you? The first question, these are easy questions. This is a party, this is fun.
You should tell them that he changed signs with me because he thought I'd be first. Just saying.
Did it?
Yeah.
Got you.
Well, I told her what you did.
These are easy questions. You all sit in different, you have different perspectives, different jobs, different impacts on the city. We'd like to know, what is your favorite project or your most, the thing you're most proud of that you've done in the city over these years, and why?
Keep in mind, we had no notice of what these questions are being, so we may be 15 minutes before we got here. But anyways, I think I'm probably most proud of the thing I probably had least to do with, but I kind of grew up around, is Grandview Avenue. And my father and uncle kind of started there, and to watch that kind of come full circle, and I probably had more to do with patching tar roofs, and when I came back from Chicago, I did a lot of the leasing. But to see that street evolve, and it really, I think, kind of speaks to where we are today in a lot of ways. I mean, that's the type of retail that I think we're now trying to integrate back into the projects we're doing. So, to have, roots in a street like that, and I think that started, I think they bought it in '72, and to see, guys like Hubert Seifert and what he's done there, and it's probably what I'm, most proud of, is to be a part of that.
What's great about that project is it really transformed an okay area into a real destination, and really changed the trajectory of Grandview, the entire community. So good for you. Kurt.
Okay. It's difficult from the standpoint of, I like a lot of our projects that we've done that have great significance. But I guess to narrow one, it would be the Schottenstein Center at OSU. That project was, near and dear for a number of reasons. I was a former athlete at Ohio State on the basketball team, and never dreamed that we might do a project of that significance. Because playing in St. John's Arena, I thought that would always be the place, and it would never change. But the opportunity came, and we were fortunate that we were the team that was asked to design a new facility for the Ohio State University, and that one is very special.
And you're also, being a graduate and an athlete, you can take great pride in that.
Yes.
It's actually changed how those facilities are used too. So, Frank.
Yeah, I don't really have one favorite project, in that I'm kind of an amateur enthusiast, and I like about everything I do.
You can name more than one.
Yeah, so years ago, before the Short North was what it is today, and the Wagenbrenner Company's done a big part of what's going on in that whole area, we bought a 3.5-acre parcel from a little now defunct insurance company called the United Commercial Travelers, which is located where the Pizzuti Museum is today. It was the former home of a White Cross Hospital, which is Riverside today, and we built the Victoria Gate apartments that then someone smarter than I was bought it from me and turned them into condos and really made the money on it. So I guess that's not my favorite anymore. Then we talked the city when they were widening High Street, where 670 was going under it, to put the cap up there, and that was really kind of cool. But really, my partner Jack Lux and my son Jonathan did that, so I'm with you on that one. I signed the note. So my favorite project is the condominium that Linda and I just moved into in downtown Bexley.
All good for different reasons.
Yeah, and Hinson owes me $150.
Wait, I owe Hinson $100.
You do?
I'll give you 100.
Yeah, okay.
Would you
I
talk?
owe you 100.
One of the things you talked about was the cap, and I think one of the things the cap did in Columbus was raise the expectations for every other freeway bridge in the city to show what you could actually do.
Yeah, the thing with the cap is that at first, part of it made it and part of it failed because there just wasn't any parking. And that's what's wrong every place. You know, it's just no parking, and there's no free parking, you know, or there's no low-price parking. And so the retailers didn't make it, but the restaurants did, and now it's all restaurants. Restaurants and bars, because they can valet, and now there's a little more parking near the area. But that's the rub everywhere. I mean, and so...
You build it and they do come.
Yeah, but they come if they can park. If
So
they don't,
those were your favorite projects. Sometimes favorite and most challenging are not the same. We know that we've been through a lot of challenging times in terms of real estate. You guys deal with building, real estate. What was the most challenging project you ever worked on? And I'm going to start with Kurt.
Well, I have a lot of
Well, you
challenging
can do more
projects.
than one.
One of the more challenging was the Poindexter Village in the heart of Columbus. One of the difficulties is that even when maybe from our side as an architect and a planner, we are looking at the benefit, we're looking at the dream. One of the things that we're accused of is being dreamers, which we are. But part of it is because we tend to have a vision of what is possible. And we know that early. So we're looking at, boy, when this gets done, it's going to be fantastic. And renderings and models can't always convey that. So we go into a community that is against it. Many of you might know that Poindexter was it was one of the first public housing projects in the city, and the Housing Authority had determined that it wanted to redevelop that. And there were residents that were concerned that they were going to be relocated and displaced, and they were not necessarily supportive of it. And so there are many community meetings, and some get very heated, where emotions are there, and it's somewhat tough to convey that it's going to be all right. I mean, when it's all done, we understand those issues, and there are a number of people working to address those issues about displacement and other things. And some of those, especially our office originated on the east side, so we used to reside there. And you have a lot of friends and relationships, and those get frayed at times where you're against someone who you're a friend of, and you're saying, you're trying to convey that we understand your side, and we're going to do the best we can to make this the best project we absolutely can for you. But that isn't always met with people either understanding, or maybe they've had an experience that didn't turn out so well. And so that's the difficulty of our profession is we may have an idea, we see what it could be, but that doesn't mean the people that we're planning it for are absolutely seeing what we are trying to convey.
Since it's in the city where you live and you can't just go home and someplace else, have people come around? Have you found that people have seen your vision?
We have. I mean, there's been a number of people that now that you're seeing real buildings and you're seeing the outcome are appreciating where we are. But undoubtedly, history is lost. Some history is lost with those buildings. But there, I think there were 27, I believe, but several of them are saved for a potential museum in the future. And but I think the community is finding that there's a better environment that can come from what was there before.
I understand the museum's in the process too at
Yes.
this point.
when did you do that? Or started?
It started almost 3 years ago, and that's the other. I mean, it does take time to meet and listen and design, and it's still underway. We're in one of the final phases now, but it took a long time to get there.
Is there an advantage to having the community so engaged, though, even though it's difficult?
Well,
Never mind.
no, speaking as a designer, one of the things that we find that if we have heard, when they voice their opinion, then we can normally find something that we can then say, we can't do it exactly like what you asked for, but here's what we can do. So, and we may not get everybody on board, but we can respond in a way that helps us get to meet some of the challenges they may have believed that are going to be a concern to them. So from our standpoint, yes, it's good to have the engagement and the people involved, even when it's not necessarily the things we want to hear. We still can we can work with that.
Frank, you said no to that question. You must have something in mind that was a really challenging project for you.
It's more than that. So the three of us, we all do different things. And with no ego involved, none of us do ugly projects. So, I mean, and that's probably why we're here, is we do stuff that in the end works within the community and hopefully works financially for the developers and the community and the banks that lend us money and the equity that's in the transactions. It's not an easy business, and it's more of an art than a science. Even architecture would be, right? I mean, it just, you got to put it all together. And so it gets particularly frustrating when you're working in different communities and the people in the communities don't really, the councils and the planning commissions don't really have an interest in voting on anything anymore. You know, they're kind of like Congress, you know? They don't want to pass anything. And so they appoint a planning commission that then appoints neighborhood commissions. And then you have people coming to meetings when you're presenting because they tell you got to go present, that are telling you they don't really want that developed because their dog goes to the bathroom on that site. And so my least favorite project, or what was the question?
Yeah, most challenging project. It could be least favorite.
Same thing, was anything I did in Dublin. Okay? I mean, just saying. I mean, that's what it was. So I've been doing this for 40 years, and in the last 20, it hasn't been in Dublin. And we've still managed to make a living. Now, we've built a lot of stuff in Dublin, but that's been for others, you know, and so our construction business, which is a different business. So it hasn't really been one specific thing. I mean, you know, at one point we got involved in an empty nester development business during the height of the home building industry. And we built about 300 homes during that period of time. We managed to lose money on every home. And got out of the 3 subdivisions and went to a psychiatrist and was hypnotized. Now I forget the name of the projects. But
I can remind you.
Don't. Homestead.
They were brilliant. We used them as models for other developments.
Yeah. It just we weren't good at that. Okay. And
They look good.
now I know
They
a lot
look
of people
great,
living
Frank.
there
They look
loved
great.
it, you know, because they bought it at less than it cost me to build it. Okay? Anyhow, it's a long answer, so sorry.
Well, but it does talk about the risk involved, that
Yeah.
while we look at, if you look at Columbus today, I was driving down streets, I commented to Jeff, my husband, the construction industry is doing incredibly well in this city right now. We're so lucky to be there, but there are risks involved, and things happen with the economy. There are things beyond your control. So I'm sure you've all lived through that. So Marks, what's your most challenging, maybe least favorite project?
Well, it's not my least favorite, but it's definitely probably our most challenging is the whole Wyland Park that we were, and this probably goes back to, I think we try not to remember when we started things because we're embarrassed how long it takes to, but it was probably 2005 or 6 when we started cleaning up the old Columbus coated fabric site in Wyland Park on Grant Street. And so, I mean, boy, I don't know how I can shorten this other than, you know, we were young and naive and we were really just focused on getting a site cleaned up that we knew we could clean up. And we were really hopeful that, goes back to 2006 and 7, that at the time we could see that workforce housing was really challenged, and cost of new housing in and around the city had gotten so high that we're like, yeah, we think we can pull this off. We're seeing it happen in other cities. We're gonna, get low land costs. We're gonna come in here and build a product that, a lot of people need. And so when we started the product, when we purchased the property, we then started looking around and doing more due diligence. And we caught on to the fact that, oh my gosh, look at the mortgages on all these houses that, essentially are boarded up. And essentially, we caught the mortgage crisis before everybody realized how bad it was. And we were so fortunate to have great partners. I mean, you most have heard, but J.P. Morgan Chase Foundation, and really it was Ohio State and Campus Partners that invited us in. But then once we uncovered what a time bomb we were sitting on, we were able to go back, and then obviously the mortgage crisis hit, and we hit the lows of the recession, and we had partners like Columbus Foundation was incredible. I mean, so everybody kind of looked at it and said, in the midst of all this misery, here's a time where we can really probably make a big difference in this neighborhood. And everyone got together. We formed 3 different quiet LLCs. We started acquiring a lot of the land, really on a fee basis. I mean, the good news was we had large tracts of land at low land values. The bad news, it was worth huge negative values because we still had to get it cleaned up. But a long story short, we were able to get, I think we ended up, the Columbus Foundation financed, home grants to clean up houses, hundreds of houses. So we're really proud at the end how it all came out, because we're seeing a neighborhood really come back. And we started, I think, two and a half years ago, we started 4 model homes, and we expected to sell maybe 4 or 5 a year. And the first year, I think we sold all our homes, which I think was around 52 homes, and now we're in the second and third phase. And really, what we sensed in 2007 is here again today. If you can provide moderate priced housing in and around the city, there's tremendous demand for it. Yeah. And so, in the rest of the neighborhood, I mean, you could write a book, so many people and all the efforts they made to, try to turn that neighborhood around and keep it in a mixed income. It's, we're really proud of how that came out.
It's such a challenge to keep it as mixed income, and that neighborhood has had so many partners, nonprofit, for-profit, development, Columbus Foundation.
Like CPO's done a fabulous,
I would
Michael
imagine other
Wilkos
cities are maybe looking at what happened in Wynwood.
Yeah, I think they are, but it's hard. Timing was everything there. I mean, we thought it was bad timing, and in the end, it proved out to be good timing. But planning for that is, that's the biggest risk in our industry. It's
you don't know what's
better
around
lucky
the
than
corner.
good. It's all about timing, and God knows in this day and age, you can't predict what's coming around the corner.
Well, you're all still working very actively, so you must look around the city and have a dream project or something that you would love to do that you haven't done yet. So I'm going to ask Frank first what his dream project would be.
I don't have a dream project, so sorry to disappoint you on that one. We go from, I call them vertical markets to vertical markets. So when the banks want to lend to hotels, we develop hotels. And when they want to lend to senior housing, we develop senior housing. When it's time to do apartments, we do apartments. And we buy office buildings when other people are selling them. And most of what we do is not in Columbus. So I don't have a bucket list about anything. So we just kind of keep moving on. My dream is to keep doing what I'm doing, as long as I can, and have a good time doing it. I don't really think I've worked one day in my life, at least not at work. So we're just going to kind of keep looking at it. I mean, I don't have a high rise in mind, or to build a arena or any of the stuff. And interestingly, we all have different skill sets up here, and different things that we try to do. We mostly build from scratch, mostly, but we're redoing a historical building in Denver into a hotel, building from scratch in apartments in San Antonio. So it's wherever we see an opportunity, and because we have people with us, 200 employees, different skill sets, we think we can do all those things with people that know what they're doing. And I'm just at the front end of the deal. I don't run the businesses. I just kind of do the transactions. So it's a long answer, no. But I don't,
But it may appear at your doorstep.
yeah. I hope there's something that comes up. But everything excites me.
Yeah.
So it's my answer.
Kurt?
I'm similar to Frank from the standpoint, I don't have one. I mean, there's a bunch of projects that are yet to happen that when we become aware of them and we start looking at, boy, we really match up well with this, we've really got great experience or great ideas, that's when we really get excited as to understanding that the project has challenges, and those are good, that has challenges that mean that our level of creativity has to rise. Those are the projects that we get excited about. I mean, there are nuts and bolts projects that we as a company, and like many companies, have to have. You have to have kind of work that really creates a revenue stream and that keeps people busy. But then there's the projects that ask for a level of creativity that's what we went to school for. And that's what brings us out to really want to do something special. The difficulty that we as a company face where in our profession there are architects that are called starchitects, and then there are the rest of us. The difficulty is that the starchitects are believed to create a brand, an image that is just striking, and sometimes the projects will come up and it's been identified for a starchitect, meaning that we want somebody that is not here, somebody from another city, somebody from another state. We want somebody like that. You guys that are here, you can't do what we think you can't imagine. And we're sitting there saying, yes, we can. So we want the opportunity, but not necessarily does the circumstance allow. But we've been fortunate, especially here of late, that we've had some clients that are saying, stretch. We really want something different. We don't want what has just been built over and over again. And that's where we dream about being, and that's what we look forward to.
That's great. Any exciting ones on the horizon or that you could talk about? Or
The New York Convention.
Well, yeah. I mean, we're working on a mega project right now. We're working on the New York Convention Center, Javits Convention Center, which we were with a convention center specialist, an architect that specialized convention center, and we did the Nashville Convention Center together, and New York liked that project and wanted the same team. So we are fortunate to have that underway, and that's the biggest project for us to date. But again, on a smaller scale, every now and then Columbus will have a project that comes up that is going to be unique, and it's pretty predetermined that they're looking for something unique. And again, that's the dream, not just my firm, but I think most of the firms in Columbus would look forward to is being able to win those kind of opportunities.
it would be nice if we actually understood that we could have starchitects who live in our own city.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Instead
We're
of
not
feeling.
flashy enough.
Yeah.
You got modest guys like this, he can do it. He's just-
Yeah. Mark, what about you?
Well, we've kind of lucked in here recently to probably a project that I would consider a dream project, and it goes back. I used to live over in a project we did off of Fishinger Road, and illegally might just drop my daughter off at college last week, but before she could walk, I put her in a backpack and trespass into the Marble Cliff Quarry site. So this goes back, well, my daughter, 16 years ago. And so anyways, it's the quarry between Trayview Road and Scioto Darby. It's been in the press a lot lately, but it's 600 acres. And so, you know, it's something, as we walked around, I always dreamed about, you know, having the opportunity to be a part of the development. And Jim Hendricks and Mick Moore were able to convince the owner to finally sell. And you know, actually, Jack Zagurnis had something to do with it. You went. They brought it to you first, Frank. Thank God, you know, you passed. Thank you. So, and I should say this: nobody does it better than Frank. We have totally different models. I mean, Frank, few do it, or anybody does it better. But the time horizon that it takes to develop these sites, and we got lucky early on to develop patience because we had to. And you know, when we take on these large brownfield sites, we have enough going on that we can keep people fed, and then we can go out and dream on these sites that are going to take 5 to 10 years. You know, hopefully this doesn't, to bring to market. But anyway, so when we saw that quarry site, or when it was brought to us, we had a real appreciation for what it could be in terms of mixing our enthusiasm for the outdoors with development. And you know, we see the future of, you know, people like me that want to stay active, and all of us in retirement, and to be able to create with Metro Parks, you know, hopefully to take advantage of the natural beauty of the site, to create an unbelievable, you know, something outside your front door that you want to enjoy daily. So, I mean, we couldn't be more excited. And what we see is, you know, we're less than 6 miles from downtown. We're going to be able to gift 2 miles of riverfront for the bike path. So we're going to be able to take the bike path from Fifth Avenue up into, you know, hopefully connected all the way into the Heritage Trail, and then all that land that sits along 670 and those lakes, and the ability to hopefully put in kayaking, canoeing, natural surface trails for hiking, mountain biking, because the elevation that we have in the quarry, I mean, all of it, I mean, I'm like a kid in Candyland. It's like crazy. It's like, I've already wrecked 3 times. I'm way too old to be riding mountain bikes. I've had an emergency trip once and 2 pretty big falls, so I hope I make it to see the end.
Kayaking, how about
Yeah,
kayaking?
yeah, it's not the thrill that mountain biking is, but anyways.
Well, I've had fun asking questions, and I'm thinking people in the audience probably have questions. And you kind of know the routine. This is being recorded for YouTube and to be shown on TV. So there are microphones in the back of the room. If you'd like to ask questions of these 3 gentlemen, go to the microphone, introduce yourself with your name, and ask a question. And I see Kathy Fox, because she's so good at asking the first question.
Hi, good evening. Thank you all for sharing all your wisdom and fun. I'm wondering if you would each share with us your top piece of advice for anyone who wants to follow in your footsteps in a successful career in creating wonderful places.
You got all the wisdom, Frank. You go first.
The old guy has.
Good question.
So, first of all, it's the whole development business, the spectrum of the development business is a business that is dependent on understanding the numbers that make a deal work, and if you can intrinsically synthesize those numbers early so you see that there's actually a transaction there that can make sense for you financially, it's a big help. So if you envision yourself being in any portion of the development business, understanding how the pieces go together, being very logical and doing it, and if you don't, then get a partner that does. That would be one of the major things you have to do, because it's really a business of putting pieces together. It's an art, and you have to be able to do that. The second thing is you have to be very patient and about what you're doing while being persistent, because none of this stuff happens quickly. You just mentioned, a 10-year window, a 5-year window, whatever it is. And there's been projects you've pitched to get, and you're still pitching, and you're still getting, and one day they become a project. And so, and you have to be persistent and patient, and you have to be willing to be out there to do it. And then finally, from my own perspective, and it'll be different from everybody, you got to really enjoy selling. Because in every development deal, in every project one has, somebody has to be out there selling it on your behalf. And in my particular instance, that someone was always me. And it's not always me anymore in our company, which is very nice. Today there's a whole bunch of young folks doing it, including one of my sons and other people with specialties in apartments and senior living and hotels and so forth. But you got to be willing to be out there, sell yourself, sell your company, and you just got to keep doing it, and you got to understand the logic of how these deals go together. That's been our success when we've had it.
Which is often.
Yeah, sometimes.
No, I would, pretty much echo everything he said. In addition, dealing with risk, and I don't know how well you sleep. When I sleep too well, I get nervous, in terms of you've got to be able to deal with, I think people look at real estate and see like they only remember the good times, and it's a risky business because when you talk about deals that are taking 5 or 10 years, I mean, cycles are coming so much quicker. I don't care how good you are. If you get, and I used to go home all the time and tell my wife, Leah, I'm like, Leah, don't get, it could all end tomorrow, because when you're borrowing money and you're taking the risk, and if you calculate, and I think I'm most fearful of, given where we are with all the politics and, North Korea, a black swan event, you could be perfectly executed, great holdings, and, you can get waylaid by things you don't even see coming. So you can't take yourself too serious. Luck's a big part of anybody's success in real estate. And you got to be able to, know that what's here today could easily be gone tomorrow. and so.
But also with that, I agree with both answers, but with that is the ability to persevere regardless. It is the belief that you're going to get there, and when others don't. There's a lot of times in which, even within your own companies, there are people saying, I don't know if this is the best thing to do. And at some point, you've got experience, you've got education, you've got a lot of things going, you've got lots of people that are more knowledgeable about certain things than you might be, and you know where to go to get the answer that you might not have. So you can go to a special consultant, you can go to a specialist. But in the end, there is a decision, and we all talked about, our businesses from a standpoint of, and I agree with Frank from a standpoint that being an architect was a dream. It wasn't, it's like something I wanted to do from a very, very young age, and it's not work. It is just what I like to do. It's not like, boy, I got to do this. It is what I like to do. So it's like, I keep thinking, if I wasn't doing this, I'd still be doing this. It's that kind, and therefore it's easy. It's a passion that's not artificial. It's just comes with waking up and thinking, today I can do something a little better. And it's all part of it.
But you're also saying that you believe in yourself.
Yeah.
That's the perseverance. You got to believe in yourself, and in terms of sleeping at night. Do you ever think about the fact that it ought to be the banks that aren't sleeping at night? Lending us the amount of money they have? You know what I mean?
Exactly. Well, they don't,
Yeah.
They're not the ones that, like get saddlebagged, as we say in the industry.
The one thing that I'm taking away from having this wonderful conversation with you is, there's one more question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh, Gerber.
Good evening. My name is Tim Gerber, and I recently retired from The Ohio State University. And I'd just like to thank the three gentlemen on this panel for making Columbus a much more vibrant and wonderful community. In particular, Mr. Moody, for all of the work that you've done on campus to make it such a wonderful place. And Mr. Wagenbrenner, for taking over the Humco Fat Factory about 20 years ago, 15 years ago. And Mr. Cass for going after the Lennox factory. I'll remember in the early 1990s, I was taking my youngest daughter to the OSU Daycare Center, and we would pass Lennox, and there was a big sign that said, "Just for feet." And Nora kept referring to it as only shoes, thinking that this could be a really cool project. It's interesting to me to see how successful those two projects, Harrison West basically has been, and Lennox. How did you guys know that as you took those risks, they were going to turn out so well?
We followed Frank. He
Yeah,
started.
I would drive by the site, on 315 consistently, and never saw anything in it. And then one day, a young man who was working with us as a developer said, "You know anything about urban retail?" And I said, "No." He said, "Read this magazine." So I read the magazine, and we bought Lennox. So really, and he's turning 50 this year, and that was, 22 or 3 years ago. And that's how Lennox happened. And we paid for it as if it were a retail site, and the other people that were looking at it were thinking it was something else, so we could pay a little more. Because one of the odd things, just about, back then, 20 years ago, a retail site had the highest value, right? A retail site.
The world's changed.
Today, it's already changed. It's changed 9 years ago. Today, a multifamily site has the highest value because of the density that the communities want on a per doorstep basis. It's just completely reversed. So back to you can't take anything for granted because it's going to change. So but that's the Lennox. Thank you.
No, I think the Humco deal, we were really fortunate. I'll try to densify. We were lucky to start seeing the whole urban. I think we look around and when you think back, you look at Friends and Seinfeld, at a time when things were very suburban oriented, the social changes that were going on in pulp culture, and then my cousin Jeff, who's quite a bit younger than me, was coming out of college. This is probably back in the late 90s, and all his friends were determined to live in urban areas. So we kind of sent, and one other thing, my dad retired to Austin, Texas, and we thought there was no business to be done in Columbus. We had, like everybody else, we had to get away from Columbus to be successful. And so we were determined to set things up in Austin, Texas. And as we got down there, it had already obviously started heating up, and we looked around and we're like, what are we doing? This feels just like home, and why are we in Austin, Texas, when we know nobody, no banks? We're like, we think it's coming. So then we got home, and then we're able to land that Humco deal. And then from there, we were really better lucky than, we got a niche in cleaning up environmental sites, and, we got, because of our lack of ability to move things quickly, our schedules bogged us down, and we weren't, taking on risky deals before the recession. So we kind of avoided that storm, and then, then we were able to clean up land holdings near an urban core, and like I said, better lucky than good. And now we're trying to build those sites out. So,
Thank you for making a couple of silk purses out of sow's ears.
Hi, I'm Bill Lafayette, Regionomics. They're telling us that by 2050, we're going to have 500,000 to 1 million new neighbors, probably people younger than me will. But my question is to think about that and maybe give the community advice on what we can do to accommodate all those new folks without wrecking our quality of life.
As you've heard, we all have different hats, and these guys are looking at properties and determining whether or not they feel the investment is worth it, and then, you know, and considering what they're going to put on it. And then I'm typically in the role of, okay, someone's determined they're going to do this now. How can we make it happen and design something that really meets their criteria as well as the neighborhood? One of the difficulties that Frank brought up that is a concern we have, and that has to do with the number of commissions and organizations that are set up to do well, but there's sometimes a misunderstanding of the acronym of developer, and that is, boy, these guys are going to come in and do something bad. But the developer wins when the community wins. Going forward, it would be good for people to be a little bit more open to change, and that there are possibilities that sometimes, and I've seen it happen in many cases, I've seen where the idea that comes out after meeting with community groups to get to a point, because of concern of my dog goes over there and don't touch that property, that you end up with something that is not as good as what the original idea that was brought forth by the team sometimes is. And therefore, the idea of expanding and being able to be more creative becomes lessened, where if the minds aren't open when somebody approaches developing a certain piece of property. I think there's a role for all of us, and that is, if you're a neighbor, if you're there, is to set some criteria, but I do believe truly working with that team in a more positive way will yield better results for everyone involved. Yeah.
I would say that that 33-year window you're talking about, 2050, adding 500,000 people. My guess is we've added 500,000 people in the last 33 years, and we added 500,000 people in the 33 years before that. We have 1,900,000 people in our statistical metropolitan area. We are bound to want to continue to grow. Agriculture, where it used to be done by 10 people, is done by 3 people, so people are going to keep moving to the cities. If you don't like the growth, move to Dayton.
That's growing now.
Yeah, or something, you know, or something. I've panned everybody tonight. I'm pitiful. I think that the growth is normal. We can accommodate the growth. 60% of our population lives outside of the outer belt today. Every time you go out 1 more mile, you're doubling the area of the city. I just don't think we have any problems other than parking. Okay, and
autonomous vehicles.
I deal with people.
Parking's
I
not
deal
gonna
with
be a
people
problem.
every day that say, "Don't build more parking because of the electric car or the autonomous car," which is just unbelievable to me. When there's 800,000 F-150s being sold this year, and number 2 is the Chevy, and number 3 is the Dodge, and so it's a long way off. These, the driverless cars, and they still got to park someplace. Are they going to go home, or people going to carpool? I don't get it. What I know is that we're going to get people moving into town. We're going to get other people moving farther out of the outer belt. All that's going to happen. You know, people like Mark are going to take these areas that are transitioning and know what to do with it. You know, people like us are going to buy downtown buildings at a third of the price and redo them. People, like Curtis are going to design the things that everybody's doing, and it's going to work. I'd rather be Columbus in Ohio than any other city, period.
And I'd say one thing, it's amazing to me that if you look back through history, as you alluded to, is change has been a part. I mean, so anybody that thinks they're not going to face change, particularly now, so as a group, as a society, we should all try to anticipate where we're headed and prepare ourselves for it, so it's not such a shock when it comes. Because I don't know at any time in history where you've really been able to, I love the Austin story. They had a hippie mayor and a hippie council, and they're like, we won't ask for any federal money, and then we won't build roads and people won't come. And this is back in like the late 70s and 80s. Well, of course they came in droves, and now, they don't have a road system capable, so it's just, and Portland tried the same thing, and then, so we all know the world's going to continue to change. Just look at life through the eyes of your kids and your grandchildren, and what do they want in life. As developers, we provide a product. We try to anticipate what the market wants and produce it ahead of when it's needed, and that's where we make our money. And so that's not going to change. And I think as a society, I don't know when or why we should prepare any other way than anticipate change.
I want to thank all of you for just being so candid about what you do, but the takeaway for me is how much passion and how excited you are about what you do. And we're lucky to have you doing it in Columbus. Thank you. Thank you very much.
We're lucky to be in Columbus. Incredible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We got to take these things off.
Thank our sponsors tonight, Plant Moran, the American Dairy Association Mideast, Rama Consulting, Shoemaker Loop and Kendrick, and Columbus Business First, and of course, all our speakers. Thank you again. Please enjoy the party. The bar will be open until 9 o'clock. Thank you.